Let's just dive right in with a huge question. Are people, deep down, fundamentally good, or are we all just selfish? Well, today we're going to look at the actual neuroscience behind that question, and trust me, the answer is probably not what you think.
I mean, philosophers have been arguing about this for centuries, right? At the end of the day, are we all just looking out for number one, or is there something deeper, something that actually wires us to care for each other? Let's see what the science has to say.
So, to understand what makes the average person tick, we're actually going to do something a little counterintuitive. We're going to look at the outliers, the people at the absolute extreme ends of this hidden spectrum of human caring. On one side, people who care very little for others, and on the other, people who care so much they would literally risk their own lives for a complete stranger.
And our guide for this is Georgetown neuroscientist Dr. Abigail Marsh. Her big idea is that all of us, you, me, everybody, exists somewhere on what she calls a caring continuum. Think of it as a sliding scale that measures our capacity for empathy and altruism.
Dr. Marsh's work really zooms in on two super rare groups. At one end, people with psychopathy. At the complete opposite end, what she calls extraordinary altruists. These are people who do just incredible things, like donating a kidney to a total stranger. The whole idea is that by understanding these two polar opposites, we can learn something really profound about where the rest of us fall in the middle.
All right, let's start at that first end of the spectrum. Let's take a look inside the psychopathic mind. What is actually going on in the brain that makes it so hard for some people to care about others?
Okay, so the first thing to get straight here is that psychopathy is not just a movie villain word for evil. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder with specific, identifiable traits. It's not a moral choice someone makes, it's the result of a brain that's literally wired differently. And get this, it affects about 1 to 2% of us. That's like 1 person out of every 100. It's much more common than people realize.
And here's where it gets really interesting. There's this idea called the mask of sanity. See, we tend to think of psychopaths as obviously sinister characters, but in reality, they can be incredibly charming, totally normal on the surface. But that outward appearance is really just a mask, and it's hiding a profound inability to connect with or feel other people's emotions.
And this isn't just a personality quirk, it is biological. It's rooted in the brain's hardware. When scientists look at brain scans, they find a key difference in a part of the brain called the amygdala. The amygdala is basically our emotional command center, especially for things like fear. And in individuals with psychopathy, it's not only smaller than average, it's also way underreactive. It just doesn't light up the way it should when it sees someone else in distress.
So think about what that really means. It's like having a faulty internal alarm system. If your own brain can't really generate a strong fear response, how could you possibly recognize what fear looks like on someone else's face? You just can't. You don't have a frame of reference, and that one single deficit essentially short-circuits the entire capacity for compassion.
Okay, so that's one extreme, a muted alarm system. But what happens when we travel all the way to the other side of the continuum? What does the anti-psychopath look like?
Right, so if the psychopathic brain is defined by the small, underreactive amygdala, what would you guess we'd find in the brain of an extraordinary altruist? I'm talking about someone who does something incredibly selfless, like donating one of their kidneys to a complete stranger. What's going on in their head?
Well, the results are just stunningly symmetrical. It's an exact mirror image. These extraordinary altruists, their amygdalas are not just larger than average, they are hyper-reactive to signs of fear in other people. It's the literal neurological opposite of psychopathy.
How much larger are we talking? Well, in Dr. Marsh's research, the amygdalas of these altruists were, on average, a full 8% larger than the control subjects. Now, 8% might not sound like a huge number, but in neuroscience, that is a massive difference, and it translates to a hugely different capacity to care.
And you can see this biological difference play out in their personalities. They are often incredibly humble people. They don't see themselves as heroes or anything special at all. They just have a genuine concern for others and a heightened sensitivity to someone in distress, and that's what compels them to act.
So, we've been to both ends of the spectrum, the muted alarm and the super-sensitive alarm. What does all this tell us about the rest of us, the vast majority of people in the middle? Why does it seem we're actually wired to care?
Well, here's a really simple but powerful way to look at it. The fact that we even have a clinical term like psychopathy, a diagnosis for people who fundamentally don't care, that proves that not caring is the deviation. It's the abnormality. If selfishness was our default setting, psychopathy wouldn't be a disorder. It would just be normal human behavior.
But
What about that classic argument you always hear? Oh, you only help because it made you feel good, so it was actually selfish. You know that one? The idea that getting a warm glow from doing good means it wasn't true altruism? Well, it turns out the science suggests that view is completely backward.
See, research on these altruists shows they aren't using some immense willpower to override their selfish impulses. Instead, their brains are just wired to find genuine value in another person's well-being. The joy they feel isn't some selfish reward. It's the very sign that the whole altruistic system is working exactly as it's intended to. It's the engine, not the exhaust.
As the neuroscientist Matthew Ricard puts it, finding joy in other people's happiness is the definition of altruism. I mean, think about it. A person who helps someone begrudgingly is clearly less altruistic than a person who helps with genuine joy in their heart.
So why are we built this way?
The answer probably lies deep in our evolutionary past. Humans are a rare alloparental species. That's just a fancy way of saying our babies are so incredibly helpless for so long that historically they couldn't possibly be raised by just two parents. Communities had to chip in, wiring our brains for this kind of cooperative care for offspring that weren't even our own.
So that old cynical view of human nature just has it all wrong. The neuroscience and the evolutionary data all point to the same conclusion. Our fundamental nature isn't selfish. It's built to connect, to empathize, and to care. True, callous selfishness is the bug, not the feature. And that kind of reframes how we should think about cooperation and community entirely.
The science shows our capacity for compassion is not some feel-good myth. It's a biological reality. So that leaves us with a final thought to reflect on. We all fall somewhere on this spectrum. Knowing that our impulse to help isn't a weakness, but maybe our greatest evolutionary strength, it gives us the power to choose, consciously, where we want to be.